Rogers did was, he was asking, before chasm terminology, how easy or hard is it to get a product to be adopted in the marketplace? And he did the usual sort of analysis where he looked at the 192 different factors that could exist and winnowed it down to 52 and thought even harder about it. And eventually, after I think like a decade of worrying about this issue, he got it down to his 5 factors. Got this one nailed. Here's the essence of it. He says, if you want to evaluate the degree of difficulty of getting a new technology, a new product adopted, or in the terminology that we're going to be using, that you want to figure out how big the chasm is, just ask yourselves questions that are in essentially 5 areas. The first is, what is the competitive advantage or the competitive differential against stuff that already exists in the marketplace? Now, a good way to think about it, we introduced last time, this Christensen stuff about what job is the market, does the product do. If you think about it in terms of the job that a new technology is going to do, what kind of things is it replacing, and to what extent is it a big deal, radical improvement in the marketplace versus being some little minor epsilon worth the change or worth the benefit. So factor number 1 is just what is the relative advantage. Compatibility means what is the degree of change that is required in order to assimilate the new technology, the new product, into somebody's scheme of living life or doing business. Think about it like a new software package, like SAP installation at a company. Does that change the way business is done a little bit or a lot? Well, if any of you have gone through any of that or know what the hell I'm talking about, man, it is cataclysmic. I mean, it changes, a lot of the way that every process is being done. It's more than just changing, the way that data is being processed within the company. So compatibility would be relatively low. Highly compatible means, think the word turnkey, of just being able to take something, parachute it in, and start operating with it without cobbling around, a lot of workarounds in the edges, changing around, all of your processes, hiring more skilled staff or anything like that. If you can essentially drop it in, it means it is quite compatible as a basic notion. So it fits well with the current ways and processes, does not require a major disruption of the way a person is living their life or operating their business. Third is, he calls, this is my only value added to Mr. Rogers, and it is, he calls it complexity, but having been taught at McKinsey that everything's got to be in parallel, so we wanted all positive stuff and complexity is a negative, just flip it by 180 degrees to make it simplicity. All right, the 4th and the 5th factors are really fairly common to each other, they're mutually supportive, versus trialability. And what that means is, if you especially have a new innovation, you don't want people to have to make a huge downstroke, to make a huge investment of time, energy, or money in order to try it out on account of it may not work. People are reluctant to take on all the risk themselves as buyers for a product. And one way to reduce the risk of the product is allow people some way, shape, or form of being able to sample it or try it on the front end before they actually do make the expenditure of all the money. So that's trialability, and whether it's kind of like in-store trialability or it is free samples or it's some way that people can get experience with the product before they make the risk commitment, the money commitment of actually purchasing it for themselves. And the last factor is called observability. What that means is that even if you can't try something, if you at least see other people using it, that through some form of imitative osmosis, that you might draw a conclusion that something is really cool or kind of neat. For example, back whenever it was, 10 years ago when Palm launched the first PDAs, and I can remember sitting in business meetings and people would walk in and they wouldn't have their Franklin planner. I mean, this is like breakthrough, and they'd have this little gizmo where they were doing their schedule and keeping their phone contacts, on this itty-bitty tiny computer. And as more and more people, at first, it was conspicuously observable, meaning when somebody came into a meeting, man, if you didn't have your Franklin planner, you stood out like a sore thumb. So everybody noticed there was something up here, and if you got out a little gizmo, for sure early on it would generate some conversation about how this is a new device that does something different and better than the Franklin Planner. Then as you see a couple more of them sprout out, suddenly there is momentum for the product. Observability, also my absolute favorite product is probably the iPod when it was launched. Because people, everybody's got the vision. You got the pods in the ear, and you got the person just being cool walking down the street as everybody is with an iPod. that is extraordinary observability. And at first you say to yourself, what the hell is that all about? And then you understand that this is the iPod, you see it starting to spread, and that is observability. All right, so big point is, again, Rogers' 5 factors, a way to calibrate, at least qualitatively, what the likelihood is or what the difficulty is of adoption of a new technology, or, again, in our terminology it is, if there is a chasm, we want to know is it like real big or is it like real narrow, is it real deep, is it real shallow? And a way that we assess the formidability of a chasm is by using the 5 factors.